No.
Today I'm talking about Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake. Um, I have a lot to like weird things to say about this game. I've played Dragon Quest 3 uh, twice officially before this. Once on the Game Boy Color and once on the Super Nintendo. I played a translated version of it. Both of those are fantastic. There's also a Switch version which is good too. It lacks some of the art style that people like from the series, but I think it's still fine. Um, but now there's this one, and if you haven't played Dragon Quest before, I think three is probably the quintessential Dragon Quest. Like if you could play three and kind of understand how the entire series plays, because this is really the branching off point of where they really knew what they wanted with this series, and they take this concept and apply it to all the rest of them. One and two play a little different, which are also going to be remade next year in the same style. This is a 2D HD 2D remake. I know Alex hates these. I think it looks pretty good. Could look better. I don't know, but it looks pretty good. Um, you can. I mean, the changes are there aren't that many changes I feel from the original, although the characters have been reworked a little bit, like the classes. This is a class based game. The classes have been reworked a little bit. There's a new class called Monster Guy. Can't remember the full name. Monster Masher, Monster Wrangler, something like that. He plays Pokemon, I guess. Uh, but otherwise, it's pretty similar to the original. Uh, Boy, I got some questions about this. I'm all for these remakes or whatever, these remasters. Do they have to be $60? Like, this is a remake of an NES game. Let's be real. This game came out in like 1989 or something in Japan, and then a little later here. Um, but yeah, this is a remake of a game from that era. It's hard for me as a if I step away from being a fan and looked at it as like a casual person who's like, "What's up with Dragon Quest?" and they showed me this and they're like $60. I think I'd be a little hard pressed. I think I'd have some questions about that because you put this up next to like God of War, um, any six like Baldur's Gate, Elden Ring. Like if you put this up to those, I wouldn't pay the same price for this that I would pay for this. I know some of those are 70, but regardless, a full price game. So I'm a little bit irritated by that. I think a $40 price would have actually been perfect for this, but I don't know how well it sold. I'm sure it sold like shit in America. That's how these games tend to do. But in Japan, it was a pretty big deal. Three, if you want to know the history, was I think the first really good Dragon Quest game that came out. Although technically two is rated higher in Kotaku, but I think three is much better, and it does tie into one and two. I recommend you play one and two first, but three does tie into those in a very interesting way. Is it good? Let's talk about is the game good or not. Um, it's very good. It's a very good game. Very classic RPG, turn based. Gotta have some patience, although you can put the speed up really high, which makes the battles a little faster. If you don't put up the speed, if you don't bump up that speed of the battles, they're ridiculously slow. I don't know who thought that was acceptable, but absurdly slow. So make sure you change the speed to ultra fast. Um, but aside from that, it plays like a classic RPG. I feel like there's more story in this than the original, although I could be wrong. I just maybe the world being more detailed has made me more immersed. But in a lot of ways, it feels like a brand new retell, like a brand new game. But I know that it's three, so I think that's a mark of a successful remake. Is if I feel like I'm playing something new, but also realize that I've played this before. It's a weird dichotomy there. But it's a good game. I give it a lot of props. Some of the way that the environments are organized, there's a lot more room for finding secrets and discovery across the map. So really good game. Don't know if it's worth $60 if you're not a Dragon Quest fan. You should probably wait for a sale, which pains me to say that because I want the series to do well. But should not be $60. But it is a good game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, say that, Dragon. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is interesting to. I mean, I don't like Dragon Quest, but just
Uh-huh.
to like follow the series as of late because the two games before this were like the garbage games, right? They're like the Prince one and then the Infinity Slash or whatever that was called. So the fact that they did put this out at such a high price still makes me question the management over there and what the hell they're doing.
This kind of
Because
reminds
yeah,
me. Oh, sorry, I
it's an
lagged.
NES game. You're good.
Kind of reminds me when you were questioning, like, is it really worth the $60 price tag? With Captain Keaton talking about the Link's Awakening remake. And at some point in one of his conversations, the comment was made, actually, I think I made it, where it's like, they clearly didn't just come up with this visual style to use it for the one game, in which case, yes, full price is still over asking, but justifiable maybe. But then they go on to use the same graphics and the same engine and whatever all that stuff works with the programming for Echoes of Wisdom. And Spencer, you're saying that they're going to do 1 and 2 in the same style. It's like, yeah, why not just give us the first trilogy in the same engine of 2.5D graphics and whatever you're working with, $40, $40, $40. Ta-da.
1 and 2 will be packaged together.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
My point is more just like the resources now are there. The plan was there to do more than the one game in the first place.
right.
It's not like you're hiring the team to work on this thing from scratch and then you dump them as soon as the game is done. You're going to make continued sales as the series continues in the same engine. So, but I
Yeah, no,
haven't
I
played
agree
it,
with
so I
that.
can't comment on the stuff like that.
I agree with that. Is clearly this is. I mean, and it's not like HD2D is new. This is like Octopath Traveler, that kind of thing. So it's the same
Yeah.
group, same concept.
It's like the fifth game, right?
Is it? They did.
It's like the
Who? What else was
Did,
it? It was a
did Live Alive have these graphics as
yeah.
well?
Live Alive was one of
yeah,
them.
yeah.
And I
Triangle
think there's,
triangle game.
Is Triangle
yeah,
Strategy considered this 2D HD?
yeah.
I
Because it's
think
not a
it is.
remake, but it
Yeah,
is in that style. Yeah. So
it's in its art style though. So
then the two Octopath Travelers, and
There's another game
then
that I can't remember, but I think it went also from 3DS to PC. Um, Something where like you're a band of adventurers. Your main character is a blonde guy. You move through the world, kind of like with like a bit of an isometric view for the overworld. And I think it's got like a guild system. Anyways, it's gonna maybe come to me later. But I think Alex's number of like 5 or so games is correct. And
yeah.
there's gonna be more.
And I think it's great. I mean, they're able to move these into a new era that's sort of paying homage to the old, but still looks kind of new. I get it. It looks nice, um, but I just don't know if I really do question the $60 price tag for it. It's asking a lot, and I'm afraid
yeah.
that like people that aren't familiar with the series would look at that and be like, why would I? If they like, why would I pay that? And if they did pay it, now they're like, this game is nowhere near the visual fidelity of like
Well,
any modern game.
the problem, yeah. The problem is that not only that, but they've already pre-established a value for this game technically with the other port on Switch. It's like
Mm-hmm.
$15 or
15
whatever it is.
bucks. Yeah.
$10. I don't know how much it is, but yeah, that one, which I get is like an Android port, but still, it's the base contents. It's still the same game for
Yeah.
the most part. So you've already set a precedent of like, okay, this is how much it's worth, and you're saying actually since we painted it with a new coat of paint, it's $60 now. And that's such a Nintendo move because they do that shit constantly. Like I think it was Country Returns Tropical Freeze on Switch. If it was $60, when previously, like the year prior on Wii U, they had it as a Nintendo Select for $20. And
Mm-hmm.
then they said, actually, now it's 50 because it's on the Switch, and that's such a Nintendo thing to do. So it's like I don't know. It's like it feels like Square is taking a note from Nintendo, and being like, well, it's prettier now, so it's 60.
Yeah, and you have to remember that this is a series that's for Japan. This is not. This has never been that
Mhm.
successful here. So in Japan, this is a huge deal, and this was actually just dethroned like this week as the top selling game in the country. So Here it's like nothing. I don't even think I have no idea how much it sold here. I can't imagine very well. But in Japan it was a big deal. So I kind of get it for them, but to keep it the same thing for us is strange. Because nobody really likes Dragon Quest here.
No, I think it's popular. 11 did really well for the series. It became
Yeah,
like
11
a
did do
mainstay
pretty well,
title,
yeah.
a household title now.
11 did well. But if you look at the other games that came, so like you'd think, okay, if 11, if we're gonna gauge 11 doing really well, by the way, they sold like 50 billion different versions of that game, on different things, and it's been on sale. I saw pretty quickly for like $20 as a $60 game. But that aside, that game, if you're saying that game did well, yes, that game alone did pretty well. But if you're saying, did it make Dragon Quest a big deal in the West? If you look at the games that sold after that game, we're talking like Dragon Quest Treasures, which was a nightmare. Dragon Quest Infinity Strash, which you brought up, a nightmare. Dragon Quest Monsters 4, The Dark Prince, horrendous. Like those games, and part of that is Square's problem because they released a bunch of games like in a row. But the other part is you can also look at, is Dragon Quest a success? And it's that to me still says not quite. I don't think it's really become a huge deal here in America yet.
Well, here's what we have so far, according to multiple websites, is 1 day ago, a lot of these articles were being published. So a month of sales, we're hitting 2 million units worldwide, with Japan accounting for at least half of them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I think I actually want to do a video on like what makes a video game successful based on the sales units. You're 1 month in and you're approaching 1 million for again what they're calling a remake of a game. So I think that's the most important point about this price tag, right? Because they remade the game. Okay, they didn't have to rework the script or anything like that, but they built a game from the ground up. So it's got a full price tag on it. I think the problem is the fact that, yeah, it's the titling. Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake is the full title. So you are going to hamstring your sales when you're releasing a remake like that. I'm okay with the price because they built it from the ground up. Doesn't mean I'm going to buy it full price. And I think right now the sales are pretty good. I mean, what should we expect for a remake? Like, this is the problem. I have no idea what to really compare it to.
Well, Final Fantasy VII had a game called Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think it sold a lot better than this.
Yeah.
But it's like that's like a different ballpark, though. I mean, for one, that game's completely different than from the original, but also the graphical style from 7 PS1 to 7 Remake is like astounding, right? And then you look at this, and it's like, yeah, it looks nice, but
Well, that's kind of
it's
kind of
not
what
a
I mean.
3D game. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if they did Dragon Quest as like a 3D game, like Dragon Quest 3 as a 3D remake, like that might be more.
Yeah, it's like if only
I
they
guess,
had
tantalizing.
if only they had an engine that they could run Dragon Quest 3 in, that where it would look like a modern game. Oh, they made a game called Dragon Quest 11. Just make it look like that.
Yeah, they already have.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's literally all they have to do is make that style of game, but for 3. And it's a shorter game, right? So it's not like they have to make the full length of 11.
Right.
Say.
Yeah, I don't know. I love the game personally. I look at it more as like from an overview, and I have problems when I look at it that way. But as a fan, I love it. So
kind of strange. You feel like with the Dragon Quest brand, it should do more than, for example, I'm looking at Bravely Default 2. So Bravely Default 2 and Dragon Quest 3. Now, obviously, like one is years and the other's a month, but I don't see Dragon Quest 3 going more than another like 500,000 in its lifespan.
yeah,
Maybe more people pick it up as it goes on sale, but I mean, people are waiting for 12, right? They're not waiting to go back in time to play a remake of 3.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's so interesting. Again, I want to look at like what do these numbers translate to? How do you actually quantify or qualify them? Okay, so it's comparable to Bravely Default 2. Okay, so did it do good as a remake or did it not? Did it do well as a Dragon Quest game or did it not? But
I think one way you can quantify it is next year when they release 1 and 2 in the same style and see if that sells well.
You know what? I will not be surprised if those sell even worse, honestly.
You would suspect that they would have to sell worse, but the amount of which they would sell worse would be
I think
interesting.
also the longer they wait to get to 12 or 12's release date, the more people are going to go, well, I'm only going to buy one Dragon Quest game, in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to buy 1 and 2 if they're releasing, if 12 is around the corner. People do that, right?
Mhm. That's true.
It's easy for me to be like, oh, just get all the games. But I mean, even me, I don't buy any game like full price except for Elden Ring and Tears of the Kingdom. Everything else I usually get to like 2 or 3 years later. So,
Mhm.
interesting.
And with a big game like that, yeah, it's hard to keep up anyway. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the same way. I don't buy a lot of full price games. I buy a lot of games on sale or stuff. So I have to really care. And it was like even whenever Tears of the Kingdom came out, sorry Justin, I didn't buy it because a month later Pikmin 4 was coming out, and I was waiting for that boy. So it's like, yeah, it was the same thing. It was like, well, Nintendo.
You know,
put
it'd be
out two
so
games back to back,
interesting is if you could just get a little bit of insight and information into what Square is thinking, and if they told you, like, they'd be happy with projected sales of 1, 2, and 3 remakes being 5 million or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, what does he
But
email?
these companies never say anything to you, so
I'll get Alex on it. He's good at emailing these companies and getting to the bottom of it.
Yeah, we'll send him a dear Square Enix.
Yeah.
I need to know. Do you? Hi. Do you like Dragon Quest 1 and 2?
Yeah.
do you like the game that you made?
Do you like the game? Yeah, I do.
How good you think it's gonna sell? Okay,
Yeah.
I need to know. My podcast needs to know. Thank you. I love you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love you. Yeah.
No, 60s 60's a lot though. Like I'm thinking like if I was a Switch owner and I was in the mood for a classic NES RPG, right? Even if the game looks beautiful, which I don't necessarily think it does, but still, even if the game looks fantastic, it's still a classic NES RPG, and I can pay $60 for one classic NES RPG, or I can pay the 75 it is for all 6 of the Final Fantasy remasters, the Pixel remasters. It's like,
Yeah.
I got 6 classic RPGs now, So that's also them shooting themselves in the foot for value, I think.
Well, not to mention that the first 2 times I played this game, it was on an emulator.
Yeah.
So I didn't
Yeah.
pay anything for them. I paid nothing.
Did you notice anything about this apparently improved lighting system and reflections as well? Like apparently the way that the lights are cast as your characters are moving through the dungeon, the shadows and everything are dynamic
Does it
with the movements
does
of your
it
character.
look less? Does it look less like Christmas light throw up? Because that's my problem with a lot of the HD2D games. It's just a lot of clutter on the screen.
It's not as offensive as Octopath Traveler. Octopath is a lot to look at. This is more clean, like more of a Dragon Quest look. As far as the lighting goes, yeah, I can tell it's dynamic. I can tell like as you're walking, the shadows are based off of a light source. I'm just the bar at this point is like, I think we're at an age where 3D gaming is so prevalent that like that shouldn't be like me congratulating them on fixing a light source. Like any game built in the Unreal Engine will have that solution. Like
I think there's also a question of like why this game and why now. And I understand from the business perspective, it's not the same amount of work and investment to make these kinds of games. For example, with the Link's Awakening remake, you can put that out and it can basically bolster your budget and make some sales for the next big Zelda game, as opposed to having nothing, right? It's cheaper to just hire the staff and crank out a Link's Awakening remake than it is to do. It's not cheaper, obviously, it's profitable. So you may as well do it. But, like, yeah, why not 1 and 2? Why are we skipping to 3? And if you're a potential fan who's on the fence about Dragon Quest as a whole, hello, like I am. Okay, well, what am I supposed to do with 3 releasing right now? Do I put it on my shelf and I'll wait until 1 and 2 come out and I'll play those first so I can play them chronologically? I don't know. I know I get a little neurotic and I have a lot of weird compulsions about how I do things and play things, but I know I'm not alone. And so when a company is just like, yeah, we're releasing the 3rd game remade, it's not as simple as Final Fantasy VII that had the cult following and was the Final Fantasy game to play. No one was telling their friends, man, if there's one game you play before you die, oh, it's got to be Dragon Quest III. It is so good. It is the Dragon Quest.
I have two answers to your question, actually. Well, one of them is not really an answer, but one answer is in Japan, this is a huge deal. This game is monumental in Japan. And that's kind of what I'm saying is like I get why it's in Japan, $60 full price, and then yada. In Japan, this is a huge deal. In America, nobody gives a shit. Nobody gave a shit when it came out in the NES. It was incredibly a disaster in sales. I don't think they released it in a lot of other countries, so it's a disaster everywhere else. But yeah, so that is a strange business decision that seriously reflects Japan. As far as chronologically, I don't want to spoil it.
I've heard a little about that. Yeah.
Okay, but this game is part of 1 and 2 in an interesting way.
Yeah.
I think that's enough for Dragon Quest.